Hey, what's going on? Welcome to the Doug Show. My name is Doug Cunnington, and in this episode, I talked to Adam Smith from Niche Website Builders. We're going to talk about an area that I don't have a ton of expertise in. However, I get questions about it all the time. That's your money or your life niches. And Adam's going to sort of break a few things down for us and then share a specific case study. We're not going to reveal the site or anything like that, but we'll be fairly specific, and we actually can refer to a public example that Adam has handy just to get an idea, what might be possible. So I'll bring Adam on. How are you doing today?
I'm good, thanks, Doug. I'm good. Thanks for having me again.
Absolutely. It's always good to catch up. And, I talked to your partner as well over at Niche Website Builders, Mark Mars. So it's good to catch up with you guys because, number one, well, you're fun. You're very polite. You sound smart with your British accent, of course. And that brings the whole podcast up. And it doesn't go past me. I realize the accent's wonderful. And then the other part is you guys have so much data because you work with clients and you have like a very high throughput of content and then, everything that goes along with the agency. So I'm able to learn a lot when we have these conversations. Now, we're going to sort of jump right into it. Can you explain what your money or your life niche is and, why it's important to even draw that distinction?
Yeah, sure. So, it kind of is what it says on the tin, right? Anything to do with that affects your personal money or your life. Google tends to hold those niches in a different regard to normal things. And you can kind of see why. If you had a website recommending tennis shoes and you recommended the wrong tennis shoe to someone, it may wreck the game of tennis, but it's not probably going to have a massive impact on their life. Whereas if you recommended someone, the wrong medical treatment or the wrong investment, it could have a massive impact on their life. And so rightly so, any sites that are in this YMYL space, Google tends to hold to a higher standard. So that's kind of like what YMYL is.
And I was trying to remember when it really became, some of our dialogue. And I want to say it was maybe like 2019 or so when Google was in a more major way pushing out some updates that were impacting like health related niches or money and investment advice niches. Do you happen to remember when it became, part of the general conversation?
Yeah, I don't know the exact date. It was definitely, I think, in the end of 2019, maybe early 2020, actually, and the whole EAT algorithm update came out, which is expertise, authority, and trust, where they're pushing people and sites to display, if they can, their expertise or authority and trust. And there's no definitive guide on that. I've tried searching, and you can try searching for a definitive checklist on what Google is looking for you to display EAT, but there's a consensus that you should have real authors on the page, and they should link out if they have them to either their LinkedIn profile, or if they've written a paper, or they've got a citation or a doc, or they've got an article documented somewhere. You can link out to that, and depending on how smart you think Google is, I don't know whether they are actually following those links and determining whether that person is an expert based on their LinkedIn profile. I don't know, but these are some of the things that people say you should include if you're working in a YMYL space to demonstrate EAT. A couple of other things to include would also be links out to authoritative sites or data sources or reference when you are creating content to show that the content you are writing about is backed up by fact and is valid, and you have a source of references for it. So there are a couple of different things you can do to demonstrate EAT, even if we don't know exactly what Google is saying they want per checklist or something,
And I remember when the EAT update came out, and then there were these basically like guidelines. Like I can't remember the name of the full document, but I feel like it was something like 90 or 100 pages, and it was the documentation for like manually reviewing a site, which I mean, if someone manually reviewed a site, they could go and see LinkedIn and a proper
Yeah,
profile, and then a network that looks normal and fits within that niche, and see all the evidence. But from a systematic way, I never got the feeling that that was done algorithmically and it was a manual like review, which
yeah,
obviously I hope it's obvious that Google is not reviewing every website manually. So, anyway, that said, we don't know, but there are those items that can lend the authority and make a site seem like it's written by an expert. So,
yeah,
with all that said, I mean, we don't want to go down the big tangent, which is, I mean, I think links from other sites that are authoritative, that's the way
yeah,
you borrow the authority. And that's probably the way Google is checking it. So we're back on links again, whole
yeah.
other story. So we won't even get into that. So back on track. Anything else to add for the YMYL niche or EAT before you tell us about a client that you've been working in the legal space? So any other details?
I guess just in terms of content, which will lead on to kind of how we've worked with this client. So, you know, it's typically understood that if you're going to work in this space, then you should have an expert writing the content for you. Like in the legal space, for example, if you are giving legal advice, you probably want a legal expert to write that content for you. And that's very hard to find someone who can write that kind of content and also have an understanding of why they're writing it for SEO purposes. And our agency doesn't, we're a content agency, but we don't have those people on board. Hence, we had to approach this space from a different angle. We couldn't approach it from the front door as legal experts. So to approach it from a different angle. But just going back, just a quick one on when you mentioned about the guidelines there. I don't know if you've ever read that document or even skimmed through it, but some of the websites they give as examples in there, they look like they're honestly built from like 1999 or something. It's like when the web first came out, and this is Google's official document of what a good and a bad website looks like. Yeah, it's from like 20 years ago. That's why.
It's ridiculous. I did read the whole document since, part of my job is to be familiar with that stuff. So I went through it and I was like, well, what the fuck are we supposed to take away from this? Like, I really, I don't quite understand, especially when you can always find examples to prove or disprove
Yeah,
something with, confirmation bias. But yeah, as you go through, you're like, well, I basically see this violated and not like it's not how you say it is and how Google
no,
wants it to be. So it's really hard to like take that information from the guidelines and do anything useful with it. You can try really hard, but you're kind of chasing your tail if you take it too seriously. I don't remember those 20-year-old websites they cited though. I'll have to go back and look.
yeah.
It's a good read before bed. It'll put you right to sleep. So, okay.
2 pages a night.
So tell us about this client that you worked with and how the
Yeah.
whole project came about.
Sure. So a little bit of context. It was a fresh domain. This wasn't an expired domain or anything like that. And he wanted to get into this legal space. And initially, we said it's not our bag. We're not legal experts. We have a good team of writers, but we can't really provide the EAT that we think a site like this would need. So initially, we passed on the project, and then he came back and said, "Well, still want to do something, like what else can you do?" And we started thinking, okay, well, if we can't approach it as legal experts, are there fringe topics that we can talk about that potentially someone who is needing legal advice would be talking about, would be searching for? And before the call, I thought of a couple of examples. Like, so if this was in the automotive legal space, someone, and our target audience would be someone who's involved in a car crash. We don't want to be writing about, how do I find a personal injury lawyer for a car accident? But we could be writing about, are left turns illegal in Texas? Or, who's at fault at us in a certain situation? And people who are searching for that probably have been involved in an accident where they are wondering if they're at fault. And in that case, they may need a lawyer. They may need some legal advice. And by creating that kind of content, we're not giving legal advice. Essentially, we are just saying, and as per the law of this state, this is who's in the right and this is who's in the wrong in this situation. And it's a good kind of way of approaching the fringe topics then. And using we've got a couple of different keyword research methods, but one of the primary ones we use are question-based keywords. We've got this whole systemized methodology of uncovering those. And I don't mind if we want to talk a little bit about that. I know it's a bit off topic, but the whole website is essentially made up of this question and answer based content around situations that someone may be in that would lead them to be potentially seeking legal advice. So it's basically talking about everything around the topic apart from, in this case, the accident itself, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Well, yeah, let's get into the details of the keyword research portion and identifying those questions.
Yeah, sure. So we've talked about this quite a few times now, but our methodology for this question-based research is essentially we make use of a lot of the people also asked box within Google, and we start with a seed list of topics that we think would be relevant in this space. So in this case, it could be car accidents for just as a top line example. And then we've had a tool built then which allows us to extract literally thousands of people also asked questions from different variations of that seed keyword. And what we end up with is literally a list of, like I say, thousands of questions that not we feel are relevant and not tools like SEMrush or Ahrefs tell us are relevant, but literally Google say, we think if you put these keywords into Google, these are the questions that we think are relevant because they show up in the people also ask box. And then we do this whole process where we remove the duplicates, we remove the ones with duplicate intent, which I think is a very important step because lots of these keywords will be very low volume, and some of them are even zero search volume keywords. So it's important to, you'll have lots of overlapping intent in there. Same question worded slightly different. So we remove that intent, and unfortunately that's still a manual process. We haven't figured out how to automate that yet, but you literally Google every single keyword, see what the results are on page one, and if it matches what the question is about, then great. And if it doesn't, you either amend the title so it includes what it's about, or you just get rid of the keyword fully. And then the last step of the process is to try and cluster these together. So like I mentioned, they're low volume search terms, and we use Keyword Cupid. It's like a clustering tool. The owner, Leo, is actually really cool. We want to get him on our podcast because the guy's a data scientist. Like, he's built this from a data science background, not from like an SEO background, which I think is interesting. And you can put this giant list of keywords into Keyword Cupid, and it does its thing. Rudimentally, it basically groups them together based on common results in the top 10. I know it does a little bit more than that, but that's rudimentally what it does. And what you're left with is a list of primary questions and then sub questions which are related to the primary question. And that's essentially how we then structure our article. The title is the primary question, and the subheadings, the H2 tags, are the related sub questions. And the good thing about this methodology is there was an SEMrush study which said, I can't remember when it was, but it said at the time around 80% of people also asked questions were eligible for featured snippets. So when we create maybe 100 pieces of content and each one of those has 4 questions, we've got the potential for 350 plus featured snippets. So it's featured snippet heaven basically when you create content that way.
Got it. So a couple things I want to go deeper into. So it sounded like you guys have an internal tool to iterate and get more and more of the people also ask questions. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Okay. Can you tell us, like, what is the tool written in? Like, can you tell us some of the background?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a developer. I'm pretty sure it's some kind of Python script. And basically, I mean, it's not even a complicated tool. All it does, it opens new windows on a virtual server and puts in the seed keywords, and then it automatically opens and the people also ask question box and it downloads it into a report for us. You can do it manually. You can literally Google a question and then keep clicking. The people also ask the box and more questions keep appearing. But with this tool, we can set it to say open the first 100 questions of every seed keyword we put in there and then download those 100 questions. So if we have 20 questions, we're going to end up with, 2,000 questions.
Okay. And then that's pretty cool. Yeah. It sounds like a fairly simple project for a beginning, Python developer or something like that, or you could hire someone to do it. Very cool. Okay. So after that, you take out the duplicates and you said that's pretty much manual to, unless it's identical, but.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the first duplicates is literally, is this identical or not? And just literally find and replace in Excel to do that one. Not a find and replace, sorry, remove duplicates. Yep. And then from there, then it's the manual process of Googling each one of them individually and seeing what the results are. If the results for 2 questions are very similar, then we get rid of one of them.
Okay. And I know our mutual friend, Ben Adler, right? So he has the tool Keyword Chef, and he has like a new feature where there's like a SERP score, and essentially he's looking at what you're talking about. So it looks at the SERPs and then it compares how many results are common between different keyword phrases. And then you can see it's like 40% the same in the top 10 or whatever. So I guess, that would be a way to mechanize it. But then you have to pull the SERPs for those, whatever, probably at that point, 800 keywords or something like that. So that could be a little bit taxing from just throttling Google, like they would find weird activity and make you stop doing that so quickly. Okay.
I think Ben's tool also pulls in, I think literally this week he added a feature which pulls in related people also ask questions as well.
Okay.
Which is kind of cool.
I didn't notice that yet. So, okay. So I think anything else you could think of for that? So you cluster it together with keyword Cupid and okay. Very cool. So for this specific client, did you guys do the keyword research for him or?
Yes.
Okay.
So we did the keyword research. The site launched with 100,000 words of content based on this methodology. It's around 100 posts because each one of these is roughly about 1,000 words. So it launched with about 100 posts. It was on a fresh domain, and then we started link building. So we started a Shopman skyscraper campaign. But this campaign is a little bit different to some of the other campaigns we've run because the client had a unique skill set. They were able to create a data set for us, and we'll talk a little bit in about a public example so people can kind of visualize what I'm talking about here. But he basically was able to source and find publicly available data within the space, which was very untidy. Think about it as literally you go to a website. It says, this is the data for 2018. You click it and it's downloaded in a spreadsheet and it's horrible to read. He took data like that and then using a WordPress plugin, it was a Google Maps plugin, which he's able to overlay different polygons over the top of it and then different data within each polygon. I don't quite understand how he did it, but he was basically able to take this data and overlay it onto a map of the US, with each state having its own clickable link, and you could click into the state, and then on the state, then this was incidents happening at certain locations, and it came up in that state. These were all the incidents that happened in that year, and you could click each one, and it would open up a little box, and it would say who was involved, what the date, what the time was, what the report was, basically all the data that was in this data dump he found. So he's able to create that. He's also able to create some nice looking graphs, which showed like trends over the year and what day this certain incident happened on the most, and is a male or female likely to be more involved in this certain type of incident and things like that. And we basically then use that data to create our skyscraper article. It was based around this. There was lots of graphs and data, and the map was embedded in there as well, and we used that as the outreach piece. And it worked really, really well, like really well. Better than a normal campaign would, as you would expect, because it's got this unique element and angle of data which is available, but it's not available in this format.
Perfect. And that's one of the things, you hear like, oh, if you want to create linkable content,
Yeah,
put together something unique that's not available somewhere else. Custom images are really good, but this takes it one step further with actual real data that is obviously important because it's been compiled and published in different places. And
yeah,
like you mentioned in this case and in so many others, the data is literally available. I mean, one example from the last, year and a half is COVID cases, right? Like all that data is out there and there's a lot of different ways to look at it. And in fact, I've heard people argue about how they would like to see the data presented so it, fits the way that they want to interpret it versus anything else. So, I mean, you probably can find this in a lot of different niches overall.
Well, there's also talking about the COVID data. There's a great guy I follow on LinkedIn. His name is Ferry Kaszoni, Kaszoni, and they do a lot of this type of outreach. But for mainstream media, they'll get links placed in, like the Express or New York Times and things like that. But they created a data-driven website based around COVID data they were able to scrape from government websites. And I'm just looking at it here, and yeah, so this is it. Templated traffic. No, I can't find it, but you can look him up on LinkedIn. His name is Ferry Kaszoni, and basically their project was they took this data that was from a government website, horribly formatted, and they used it to create a template, and they created literally hundreds and hundreds of pages around COVID data X in the city, and it got tons and tons of long tail traffic, and they launched it, and they didn't create any content, they just use this content in a new template. And that site's getting millions of visitors. I mean, it's not going to last after COVID happens, but in the meantime, the guy's making an absolute fortune from display ads. And he says that. He says, this isn't going to last forever, but in the meantime, I'm making a ton of money from display ads for literally just taking this public data and presenting it in a better template with, pages that are focused towards long tail keywords.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah. Well, people can look it up. They could find it on their own. So, and you mentioned that your client was able to get, I think, about 100 visitors a day after about 5 months. And that is like, we're at 5 months right now. So that is current based on and I was looking at the graph. I mean, it's just a nice upward trajectory, very even slope. So, what's next for this specific site? Is a lot more content being added? What's going on with it?
Yeah, so now we finished the shotgun campaign. We've now moved back to content creation. So we're going to work on content for the next 4 months, and then from there we're going to move back to another skyscraper campaign because he's found the data that he originally pulled together was old data from 2019, but they've just released the 2020 data. So he's now going to create, while we work on content for 4 months, he's going to create a new data set based on 2020 data, and then we'll go back to another outreach campaign then.
Got it. And for people that want to see a specific example about how something like this might work, you mentioned a public case study, public example. I'm not sure where it's from, but we'll link in the show notes so people could check it out. But Adam, can you take us through, what this case study was, or where did you find it too, and then tell us the story?
It wasn't even a case study. I literally came across it by accident, this website, and I didn't even know what they were doing to start with. I came across the affiliate side of the website when I was doing competitor research for a site that was in the gun optic space. I was like, oh, this is a cool site, but it's on a bit of a weird sounding domain. So the domain was killedbypolice.net. And I was reviewing all these gun scopes, and I thought, oh, like weird domain name, site's doing really well. What's going on here? And we started looking at it, and basically it looked like for years and years this website basically took publicly available data around fatal police shootings in the US and manipulated it into a nicer looking format. And when you check the original source website against Killed by Police, I mean, it's got like 3 or 4 times the number of backlinks. Like it was clear that people were linking to that resource rather than the original data set because it was in a much nicer format. And then, so if you look at Ahrefs, you can see for a long time it was nice and steady. It wasn't getting a ton of traffic. It was acquiring lots of links, but not a ton of traffic. And then someone clearly, I'm assuming, bought it that was in our world, and then very quickly built out a gun optic affiliate site on the back end. And you couldn't really tell looking at the homepage. The homepage was this whole data set about, the chart, flashing, saying, latest shooting here. And then up in the top right, there was like a little tiniest menu option. You click that, and then it opens up with this mega menu of hundreds of different scope reviews. And you could see, like, as soon as they started adding that content, the traffic in Ahrefs just shot up, and it was doing very well for quite a while. The site now redirects to another gun website. So I don't know what happened to that, I don't know why they took it down, but it now redirects to another gun site. But I sent you over the URL, and you maybe can include you can see exactly in Ahrefs when the redirect happened and the explosion of traffic on this new gun website, basically. But I think it's just a public example people can go and look at of, even if you probably have to look at it way back now, but an example of a site that takes publicly available data, manipulates it, does extremely well at generating backlinks, and then turns it into an affiliate site or a money-making site, however they want to monetize it. Or if you were clever, the guy who probably bought it from the original owner because it was steady for years with no affiliate content, and then they bought it, and then this explosion of affiliate content.
Right. Yeah, it's something else. And for the people that are listening, basically for years, it looked like the site is getting maybe like 15 to 20,000 visitors per month as estimated by Ahrefs. And then there's a bit of a downturn for about a year. It looks like maybe the site went down, or it expired, or, it went to auction. And then whenever the new owner picked it up, it jumped to about 100,000 visitors in what looks to be about 3 days or something ridiculous. I mean, it literally went from 0 to 100,000 visitors, which, as we know, typically Ahrefs or SEMrush or other traffic estimation tools, those are kind of low. So I wouldn't be shocked if this site was getting 3 to maybe 500,000 visitors per month. And it
was all the affiliate content. When you checked it out, all the affiliate content.
It's really insane. I mean, you have to layer on a lot of different skills to like pull this off. Like, we're describing it really easily, and it's it's impressive, but like, you have to know the keyword research. You have to understand the value of like an expired domain or an aged domain, and then you have to know how to publish a lot of content in a way that Google is going to actually send you traffic and then convert. So you're layering on like 10 different skills, like fairly minute. The results are amazing.
Yeah. I wonder if they sold it then to this new, I think is what's it called?
It's like Robber.
Robberguns.com. Yeah. So I wonder if they sold the site to those guys, and they just decided they want to get out. They've done this cool project. It's making them a ton of money, and now I'm going to sell it to another site.
Yeah, and I think, that would have been a really smart thing to do. And by the way, this is very recent. It looks like January 2021 is when they published all the content. And then, it jumped up and it sort of dropped back down to, I would say like 75,000 visitors per month. But if people are curious, you can go, look at this. We'll put the information in the show notes. So any other takeaways from this example that you brought to us?
Not really. I think the other thing to think about is that the data that you have. I mean, you don't have to be a data scientists to make the data better. Like the client that we're working with, the overlay on the map looks good, but then the tables and charts that are created, they just look like, they're pretty rudimental. And even the killed by police data, it was just like a WordPress table. It wasn't anything fancy, but it's just way better than a downloadable Excel that you then have to troll through. So you don't even have to make anything fancy out of this. But I do think not just having the data set is not enough. You then have to do something with it, and typically that will be some kind of outreach, whether that's like a shotgun skyscraper outreach style method, whether that's you think the data is good enough to go out to journalists and you can pitch it to journalists. You need to have a method of taking that data that you've created and made awesome, and then saying to hey world, come and have a look at what I've created. So that's probably another skill set that needs to be layered on top of everything else. But if you can do all that successfully, and you can do this methodology in most niches, if you just think outside the box a little bit. There's data available from, like, here in the UK. I don't know what you've got in the US, but we've got the Office for National Statistics that basically is like our official data collecting agency, and they have data on everything, like so much data. So I'm assuming you have something similar in the US that you can access, and you can come out and find an angle for almost every niche.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And I don't know the name of such an office, but I know there are, just thinking of like businesses in general, right? You probably can get information from the small business administration, and then see like, oh, there's this many small businesses. You can pull down the master data set and then manipulate it and filter it down to whatever your niche is, and say, oh, there's all these lawyers, since we were using the law example earlier. There's all these lawyers in each county, and here's the bar situation or whatever. So there's probably a lot more ways to use this idea, but you have to, like, it's not the easy thing. It's not the thing that everyone's doing. You'll have to go and dig and then iterate on it a few times, most likely. So awesome. Well, any other observations before we wrap it up, Adam?
No, I think that's it really. So I guess just key takeaway points are, don't be afraid to look at or consider YMYL spaces, even if you don't have the capacity to write expertise content. You just got to think outside the box on how you can approach it. And then if you can couple that with some more outside of the box thinking around, data collection and data manipulation in the space with an outreach program, it can work really well. I've got a feeling that this site will just continue to grow. And, at least in this space, you don't need a ton of traffic to make it work really well. We're just signing up with an affiliate program that pays $200 per call. I mean, you only need a couple of those per month for a qualified call to go through to be making some serious income on there.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. Well, very good. And where can people find you?
Nichewebsite.builders is our website. We've also got our own podcast, which Doug has been on before, and it's on our YouTube channel, or you can reach us either via the website. There's a chat pop-up on the website, or you can just email me directly at team@nichewebsite.builders.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Adam. Always fun to catch up and talk to you.
Thanks, Doug. Appreciate it.